Scott is with another Massachusetts company, the gateway provider BlueSnap. So Scott, take it away.
Thanks, CJ, and thanks everybody for spending a good part of your day with us. Hopefully you're getting value out of it. I think there's been a lot of great points brought forward already about the complexity and opportunity of going cross-border, the importance of mobile, and while I will certainly echo some of those things, I'll try to break it down to some actionable steps that you could take if you're thinking about making some of those moves, whether it's introducing a greater component of mobile to your commerce operations or a greater component of cross-border. So when we think about it here at BlueSnap, we think about this problem in terms of checkout abandonment. And on the next slide, there's a whole slew of different changes and things going on in the market, and we could pick any number to talk about, whether it's the smartphones and mobile or the effect of digital wallets on how people are paying. But it's within this context that we think there are discrete issues going on that you can measure, that you can continually improve against so that you stay in front of and take advantage of the opportunities. So just a quick couple notes about who BlueSnap is. I mean, we are a payment gateway. We're great partners with Count, and we take advantage of their software in our own payment gateway offering. We deliver it as an integrated component of what we do, as we do with many of the other partners on the call today, because it is about collaboration, which I know Don started out with, and getting e-commerce right in 180 countries is hard to do right, and so we need those partnerships, and we've got many folks represented on the call. Just quick note on our platform, it's used to serve a number of e-commerce applications on the next slide, whether that's online checkout in a traditional shopping cart kind of environment. It's helping businesses process invoices, whether they be for B2B or indeed some of the new emerging marketplace models that you'll see. So, if we dive now into what is this checkout abandonment problem and what are some steps you can take about it, what I want to do here is I'm going to walk you through the concepts, give you some real life, or I should say fictional examples, but with some real life views to protect the innocent, and then give you some data along the way about how you can measure your own environment. What is your environment doing for your consumers in terms of giving you a really good checkout experience? So we all spend a lot of money on the marketing to drive people to our site, and I think this echoes what we just heard from Steve. Are you thinking about the payment side too? And that UK jeweler example going to Germany is a great example. A lot of time and energy and effort spent to get the website just right. Are you spending the same amount of time on the checkout experience and making sure that's just right? So we think on the next slide, to get this right, to convert more, you have to solve the abandonment issues. And the abandonment issues, some of them are what get called in the industry a lot shopping cart abandonment. And these are more things like, are consumers excited about your product and the price you're asking them to pay? Do they feel like they can get it delivered in the right amount of time? These are sort of issues that are more about the product itself. That there is a scarier form of abandonment that is out there and it is very real, which is abandonment that occurs after they've made the decision they want to work with you. They want to buy your product, but now for some reason at checkout, they leave, or maybe they get rejected falsely. And so I want to talk through the different components that make that up. If you talk about what checkout abandonment is, on the next slide, it really boils down to three major issues. Either there's too much friction being created at the checkout, your consumer is losing confidence, or you end up with a payments decline that is a false decline where your consumer actually was good for the money, but because of something about the way you're processing the transaction, you get false declines back from the networks. And each one of these can be measured. Each one of these needs to be continually monitored and improved. To try to flesh this out a little, I put together a few slides with a fictional merchant, and this is on the next slide. We've made up a guy named La Cuisine, and they're a food delivery service that is a subscription model and is trying to sell food delivery in multiple countries. So on the next slide, you get a feel for, well, what are the kinds of issues that could cause friction? And it's any numbers of these. Am I asking you to pay in a currency other than your own? Do you not understand all the terms because the language isn't a match? Or, to the point Steve brought up in an earlier slide, are you only offering cards or select payment types, and I really want to pay with an alternative payment method? Getting this right on the next slide is not impossible to do, but it's something you have to look at your business. What do I really need? I will eventually need the address and information to get this order completed, but don't I want to just get the payment done first, and now I have a customer, and I can deal with some of the logistics later. That's different for every business, and these beautiful forms here, including adding wallets, for example, can be easy for me to put up on a screen here, but I'm sure each of you, if you look at your checkout experience today, are there ways that you could reduce some of the friction that's there without compromising your business? And it's really that kind of thinking that needs to happen. In particular, this slide that's up and then the next, thinking about digital wallets, one of the great things about the wallets is they really solve a lot of the friction problems. When you give someone the opportunity to pay with Apple Pay or Visa Checkout or any of the others on the screen here, they're able to authenticate either using just a thumbprint or maybe a singular password, and by doing so, they skip all the forms. That one authentication provides the payment credentials, the shipping credentials, any other authentication information you needed, including the contact information to send invoices or receipts, really streamlining that checkout experience. And the statistics that we've seen in studies we've done on the next slide say that each one of these issues I alluded to quickly, whether it's offering local currency, well, that can save up to a 10% of what would have otherwise been abandoning shoppers at the checkout experience. Likewise, when you think about alternative payment types, each market is going to be different. We heard that both from Steve and from the presentation from Grin. But if you don't offer the right payment types for the right market, you could have a lot of disgruntled shoppers, and many times they'll vote by leaving. So getting friction right, and there's more data that we can share on this, but getting friction right is a really important first step. And often this is something that you can do with your own critical eye if you just take a hard look at the checkout experience you're offering today. Similar to that, the next bucket of challenge is confidence. And this one, in some ways, is the simplest to get right and is yet so often not right. You've got to make sure that a customer has the opportunity to feel confident about security, feel confident about the amount they're paying, and grab an opportunity to get help if they need it. If they're at the checkout page and they can't get a quick question answered, or they can't get that feeling of comfort, they'll abandon there. And the next slide is just a simple example of how we took that complex checkout experience. We gave the necessary confidence factors without spending a lot of time and energy, without complicating the experience. And whatever, you have to look at your own business to understand what's right for you. But on the next slide, if we talk about, what does getting confidence right mean, the data we've seen shows, there can be tremendous drop-off when customers don't feel good, don't feel confident at the checkout page. And there's several factors beyond these two that add up to confidence, but getting that right is really important. So again, friction and confidence both tend to be about what is it that the customer is seeing or feeling or experiencing at checkout. Payments and the potential failure of payments is sort of the most dastardly of all, because now you have a scenario where a customer has clicked purchase, they've entered in all the information, whether your forms were 10 pages long or a simple click, and now they've gotten a false decline. And there can be lots of reasons, particularly as you start moving to mobile commerce or cross-border, that can cause payment fails, where you get a false decline on what is an otherwise good transaction. If you don't have the right fraud system in place, sometimes you can be too aggressive, and this is one of the things you'll definitely hear Don talk about at Count, is getting that right mix so you can let the maximum number of transactions go through. Count is a tool. Yes, it prevents fraud, but it really enables you to accept more payments when you get it running right. Likewise, if you don't have the right currencies matching to the cardholder, you can get payment failures and several others. Understanding your current payment conversion rates, looking hard at what is causing those payment conversion rates to be held down, and then working at it is one of the most important things a merchant can do. And this is something you need to partner with your payment gateway to get the right data to help you analyze this and look at this on a regular basis. So as you start to fix this, we want to get to where we're seeing more thank yous and less oops on the payment screen. And just again, to put some data around this, when you process payments locally, so if you are trying to sell to a shopper in Germany, you should really be processing that payment through a German acquiring bank. If you're processing a payment for a Canadian shopper, that should get processed through a Canadian acquiring bank. And when you do, on the next slide, you can see up to 20% of payments that would have otherwise been declined can be saved. And even simple things like having a failover capability on how payments are processed can save you 5% of transactions, because it is a complex world in the payments acquiring networks, and they're not fail-safe. And sometimes you'll get declines simply because of timeouts. And so having retry and failover capability is important. So we've given you a quick run through here on on the challenges that can show up. So how do you measure the problem? There's lots of ways. We've created one way. We have a checkout conversion calculator on our site, as well as some white papers that explain the data behind this presentation. But what they do is they break down the different components that can cause either those friction, confidence, or payments problems, allow you to self-assess and see where you stand versus the market, versus your peers. What we've seen on the next slide in terms of scores of folks when they've taken these tests, they tend to average about coming in that middle range there on this index, this scoring from 1 to 100. Importantly, our experience says that can risk anywhere from 10 to 20% abandonment that can be prevented by putting the right steps in place. Each time it's going to be different for your business, and certainly different vertical industries have different rules or compliance issues that need to be thought through when you make changes to how checkout occurs. But I would say more than anything, on the next slide, if I were to summarize what I'd like you to take away, thinking about checkout abandonment as a discrete issue should be a part of how you run your e-commerce operation. Are you constantly looking for ways to reduce friction, to improve the confidence of your shoppers, to make sure you don't have payment conversion issues? And is this a regular part of your operation? And we at BlueSnap think you need to expect more, on the next slide, that you need to expect more from your payments partners. And this is the folks on the call today, the folks you collaborate with to build your environment. They need to do more than just process the payments that you provide them. That we need to provide you the consulting, the data, the analysis that says there's an opportunity for you to improve based on, either friction issues or payments issues or payment conversion decline issues that can be tackled. So again, just to wrap up for the brief commercial on BlueSnap, we've built a platform that allows you to go global. We really, into the platform, have built the tools needed to tackle these checkout abandonment and conversion issues, whether it's having multiple acquiring banks or the right tools for mobile or the right payment types that meet your shoppers' expectations. And the next slide is just a breakdown of the platform, which is really, an easy API to code to that gives you access to global banking, global payment types, and global currencies, the data you need to understand whether you're performing as well as you want, and then the value-added services required, importantly, including the count fraud prevention built in. So if we bring it back to the beginning, in a sense, what we've been talking about here is the importance of really treating checkout and payments as an area that should have continual oversight, should have data that supports how you're doing. You should have goals around either reducing friction, improving confidence, and measuring those things, or indeed improving your payment conversion rates and measuring those things. And you should put the same amount of effort into that as you would marketing your site, as you would building your site and your products. And that, I think Steve's example of that UK jeweler trying to enter the German market is a great one, because they had spent the right energy and effort to build the marketing, to build the product out. They put a lot of thought into how their website would serve the German market. But if they had put the same effort and energy into the checkout experience for that German market, they probably would have had better results. And so with that, I'm hoping, first of all, DJ, we got us a little bit closer to on time, but if there's any questions people have, I know we'll take questions at the end. I'd be thrilled to answer them then, or feel free to hit me up directly at any time, and we'll hope, again, thanks very much for joining today. We hope you're having a good experience and learning a lot so far.